Welcome to Flexible Work Options 101, offered by the Office of Work Life at the University of Kentucky. In this session, we will be offering an overview of all the flex work options that we offer at the university. First of all, just to start off, to talk a little bit about the Office of Work Life. The Office of Work Life is an office that provides strategies, support, services, resources for UK employees as they are managing their work and life responsibilities. We also oversee the university's engagement survey that's offered every other year. And overall, our goal is to make a positive impact on the productivity and morale of our employees as well as the university. So we're basically here to support our employees as they are doing the best they can to manage their work and life responsibilities. Some of the services that we provide are counseling services, child care and parenting resources, elder care resources and consultations, as well as flex work arrangements and consultations. All of our resources have additional resources on our website. So if you were to go to our website, you will find quite a few additional suggestions and tips and tools for you as you are managing work and life responsibilities. Talk a little bit more about the counseling services. We do have 4 mental health therapists that offer 5 free counseling sessions per fiscal year. They also offer group workshops and trainings. We also have child care related resources on our website that includes a Big Blue Family Care child care program where we work with UK students to offer child care support to our employees. That service is intended to be a supplemental care. It's intended to be not full-time necessarily, except during the summer. It works really well if you're seeking after-school care or nights or weekend care. We also offer an annual summer camps fair in the spring. That's an opportunity for parents that have school-age children to connect with summer camps in the area and to find out a little bit more information, and they oftentimes will offer a UK discount as well. We also host the lactation space guidelines and list on our website. That list can also be located on the UK interactive map. We also have a UK Little Cats guide, which is a basically 10-page guide for expected parents or parents that are looking into that option. And what we do, we've put all the expected parents related resources together or questions in one guide. So for example, there's information on there about FML, about transferring in and to work and from work. There's information on there about all types of lactation support, just to name a few. We also partner with some UK employees to host and to facilitate a working parents network. And we have monthly meetings and brown bags and get-togethers and other resources for parents. It's a great place to connect. We have elder care resources, and the elder care consultant can offer consultations one-on-one. She also does some group sessions. She also oversees our senior caregiving conference, which is for people that provide elder care resources, and a virtual dementia tour. If anyone has a need for elder care related resources, I highly recommend joining the listserv that she has, because she sends out a monthly newsletter and blog, as well as information about the lunch and learns that she hosts each semester. There's usually 2 to 3 per semester. So flexible work arrangements is this particular topic we're covering today. We're talking about the different flex work arrangements that we offer at the university, and that includes adjusted hours, reduced seasonal hours, remote work, compressed week, and then actual reducing your hours on a more permanent basis. So why talk about flex work when you're talking about managing your life and responsibilities? So flex work sometimes works out really well for someone that's trying to manage life and work responsibilities. When you think about that whole managing things, there's a lot of things that we're all managing, and there's no one way to do that. And it looks different for different people, because sometimes we're in different seasons of life, and we have different things going on at different times. So for example, people that have small children, they may need one type of management. Someone that has children that are active in sports and there's certain football season, basketball season, or ballet or what have you. We all need different things in different times. So when you talk about flex work arrangements, sometimes that can be really helpful to someone as they are managing their work and life responsibilities, and they just need some flexibility. So here's some things that you want to consider when you are the supervisor or the employee and you are considering flex work options. So first of all, let's talk about the process. When you're thinking about flex work options, first of all, you want to look at the different type of flex work. And then you want to think which one works for me. Then you want to talk about that with your supervisor. And then once you've had that conversation with your supervisor, then you want to complete the online form. Your supervisor approves the online form, which is located on the WorkLife website. If your hours are being reduced in any way, your business officer will need to be notified. If it's not a reduction in hours, then they don't need to be notified. But you can if you just want to do an FYI. Also, once you've made the agreement, the form has been completed, it's approved by the supervisor, then you start. Whatever date you selected to start, then that's the time you start. And that will vary depending on the type of flex work you're participating in, as well as just your need. So here are some things to note. If you're thinking about flexible work options, you want to think about, what are my job functions? How is this flex work going to impact my team? So if I'm doing remote work versus flexing my hours in some way or reducing my hours even, how is that going to impact the team and the work that has to get done? My job performance, making sure that your job expectation, your performances will maintain the same. You'll maintain the same level. You want to think about potential barriers to success. That's very important to think about. Whether it be you're working one day from home or 2 days from home, or you're reducing your hours or you're adjusting your schedule. Think about what are some things that may cause a little snag in that plan, and then plan accordingly. So just have that conversation with your supervisor, but maybe even prior to that, think about it for yourself so that you can start saying, what can I do to make some adjustments? What can I do to make sure that that's not a barrier? Productivity, your projects, making sure you do everything you need to do. Think about the impact on communications. For example, if you're not next door to a person, you can't just walk next door and say hello. If you're working remotely, you got to make sure you have a plan for Skyping or call or Zoom or something like that. Tracking projects, making sure the person knows what you're working on, giving routine updates, having a plan for that. And just simply being responsible. Managing yourself and being accountable for the projects and the tasks in your time is super important. So here's some other things to think about if you're a supervisor and employer and you are thinking, or an employee, and you're thinking about flex work options. You want to consider who approves the request. So we try to make it clear in the Office of Work Life that we do not approve flex work requests. That is approved by the supervisor. But keep in mind, sometimes the supervisor has to get additional approval from their supervisor or even their supervisor's supervisor. So sometimes you want to think about that in the timeliness of the request and the dates you want to start, how much approval you might need. And so that's something to think about. Determine if you're eligible. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, equipment that you might need if you're working remotely, making sure you have the equipment you need, you know how to use it, and you know how to access tech support if that's needed. Also, is there a trial period option? We highly recommend if a supervisor or even an employee is ever wondering, I don't know if this is a good idea, or will this work, or how might this alter the way we do things? You can always do a trial period. We recommend a 90-day trial period. Sometimes you may go longer. You may even go shorter, depending on the work that person does, and even the time frame and the season even that you're working in. But a trial period is a good way to try it out because you can work out the kinks that way, and then you can move forward successfully after that. Do I need to provide a reason for flex work? If you request flex work and it's doable, you don't necessarily have to divulge all your reasoning there with your supervisor, but it's helpful sometimes, but it's not necessarily, you don't have to give all the details. You may simply want to just flex your hours. All right, if your request is denied, you can always talk to your supervisor and ask why they denied it. If there's a way, maybe it was what you asked for, maybe they're, for example, if you're doing remote work request and you're asking for, you know, three days at home, maybe they're more comfortable initially with 1 day at home or 2 days at home. So that's just something to think about. Or if you want to flex your hours, maybe they're saying the particular days you selected to flex, to adjust, aren't the best times because of something that's going on with the job. But basically have a conversation to see if there's a way to adjust a request and get it approved, or it may just not be approved. All right, make sure your business officer know about the arrangement, especially if you are making changes to your hours, because they will probably be the person that needs to make those changes. And you think about the payroll impact. So there's a lot of things to consider. So the earlier you can make this request, the better. So here's some options. We talk about flex work options. What are they? So there's a few to think about. There's a few when you think about full-time and then part-time. So when you think about full-time, there's the adjusted hours. That's where you are simply adjusting the same amount of hours that you work in a given week or 2 week span or month even. And you are working a different schedule almost, or you may think of it as an alternative schedule. So normally if you work, for example, 8 to 5 or 7:30 to 4 or whatever your time may be, an adjusted schedule may be you adjusting it a few days a week. Maybe you're staying later or you're coming earlier, for example. And you may do that routinely. For example, you may always adjust your schedule on Wednesdays. It could be because you have something going on in your personal life and you need to adjust for that. And it may even be that your office has some sort of a program or activity that happens every Wednesday at 6 o'clock and you normally get off at 5. And because you're staying later for that, maybe you're adjusting your hours and coming in later on Wednesday or later on another day. So that's one way to think about it. This is where it can be a win-win for everyone. Remote work, of course, that's a very popular option. Remote work can be partial or full-time from home. The partial would be if someone's working 1 or 2 days, maybe even 3 days remotely, not in their usual workspace. And then the full-time, if a person is working 100% of the time, not in a typical work office setting, but in their home, working out of their home. And then the compressed week, that is where you are reducing the number of days you're in the office, but you may be working the same amount of hours. So one option for that would be like 4 10-hour days versus a 5-day period. When you think about the part-time, that reducing your seasonal hours, that's one. Someone might simply go part-time. Phase return from leave, like if you were out for FML leave and you wanted to kind of phase your way back into the office, maybe you don't come back 40 hours immediately, maybe you come back for 30 hours initially for the first few weeks or month or something like that. So that's considered like a part-time option. Phase retirement, that's where you might choose between 1 to 3 years to lessen your hours and keep lessening your hours until you're ready for retirement or whatever date you've selected for retirement. And then reducing hours, that's more the permanent option. That happens more infrequently. That's where a person is permanently reducing their hours. And that is a decision between the department and the individual. So reduced seasonal hours, let's talk a little bit about that. So reduced seasonal hours, we're getting ready to enter our reduced seasonal hours season right now, starting on May the 3rd, which is a Sunday, through the middle of August. We are looking at opportunities for employees to take part in reduced seasonal hours. And this is something that the university offers every year. We have 2 times of the year where you can do reduced seasonal hours. That's during the summer session and the winter session. The winter session usually is between the first weekend in December through about the first weekend in February. And then the summer season is usually about the first weekend in May through about the second or third weekend. I think it's the third weekend in August this time. So that is an option where you have two options here for you. One is simply reducing your hours, working less hours. So for example, if you normally work 40 hours a week, you can go down to 35 or 30 hours a week. We recommend not going less than that 0.75, which would be about 30 hours a week for a 40-hour person. And that is because you start to impact your benefits at that point. And so, of course, when you reduce your hours, you are going to accrue vacation slower, different, that's kind of a given. Of course, you're going to make less money because you're reducing your hours. But that may be something you've already planned for, and that's going to work for your budget and your family and yourself. The other option is to take unpaid weeks off work. Lots of people do this. This is not uncommon. And we have people that do this every summer. They'll do 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks. Some people, they just do a lot of weeks unpaid. And of course, they would have already thought about the impact on their budget. But that's the reduced seasonal. There's two options: a full week off, and you can't take these in 2 or 3 days. You have to take 1 full week at a time. We get that question all the time. It'll be 1 full week, unpaid. And there's a few additional things to think about with that as far as your benefits go, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Criteria, if you want to be eligible for this, is you have to be a regular employee, working full time, and you can be exempt or non-exempt. That part doesn't matter. You can be exempt or non-exempt. And that's hourly or salary is what that means. And then, of course, you've already completed your new hire orientation period, which is typically the 90 days post-hire date. And again, just kind of making the point that our office does not approve or deny these requests. We do receive them. We have the form on our website where we track it for the university and we answer questions related to it. But at the end of the day, the final approval comes down to the supervisor. All right, more about this reduced seasonal hours. Again, this could be a win-win option for departments. If you are a department and someone says, I want to reduce my hours over the summer and work, 30 hours a week versus 40 for 2 months, that's going to save the department money because you've already budgeted for that person for the fiscal year. You're not doing it for that purpose. They're doing it because maybe they just want a little extra time off, or they have some things they want to do over the summer, or they just want to take a break. Maybe the department's a little slower. There's different reasons a person might choose this option, but it could be a win-win because they can get the time off and then you actually get to save money that you didn't anticipate saving. Also, there's so many other things such as happy employee. Also, when you think about the supervisors responsible for reviewing and responding to that person's request. So once the person submits the form online, the form automatically is emailed to the supervisor, to the employee, and to the Office of Work Life. And then the supervisor is responsible for responding to the email and forwarding it to the Office of Work Life saying, I approve this or I deny this. Now, once you've done that as a supervisor, your next step is simply to say, okay, whatever date we've set, start. Start your reduced hours. If they've reduced their hours, particularly, you want to talk to your business officer in advance of that date, that start date, because the business officer or the budget officer will need to make some changes in SAP for this person. So give them as much notice as possible, especially think about payroll. So if someone's thinking about these options, definitely put your information in as soon as possible. A month out is ideal because that's plenty of time to process all the paperwork and make sure all the changes are made in a timely manner. So thinking about, again, you have to go online and complete our form. You can take multiple weeks. I mentioned that sometimes people take 1 week. They'll pick 1 week in the summer and they'll just take that. Sometimes this is a really good option. The 1 week unpaid is a good option for new hires that's beyond their 90 days because the new hires, of course, have not accrued a lot of vacation time. But this is the only time when you can take unpaid time and not use your current bank of vacation time. So any other time of the year, if you have vacation time in your bank of days, you have to take that. You can't just say, I want to work some unpaid days. That's not, you're not supposed to do that. But if in this reduced season, you can take an unpaid week and have 7 days of vacation sitting there and not use them. This is the only time you can do that. So that's something, sometimes people just want to hold on to those vacation days because they're planning to use them in December or September, sometime when we're not in this season. So they might choose to use an unpaid week at this time because this is the only time they can and hold on to those vacation days for some other time. So that's something to think about. All right. So you will not accrue vacation or leave during an unpaid week. And that's a maybe because there's some benefit specific items there. So if a person is considering this, we always say, please call the benefits office, HR benefits office, and they have some really good tips and suggestions on some ways that you can do this. And sometimes you can still have enough money to pay for your different deductions that you may have coming out of your check every month. So that's something to think about. All right, so remote work agreement, this is the only agreement where the remote work option, as far as flex options go, is the only one that has an additional agreement when you fill this out on our website. So the remote work, when you fill it out, you will have an additional agreement because it's a little different than the other types of flex work. So again, if a person was simply adjusting their hours, they're in the office, they're just adjusting their hours. If they were compressing their week, they're in the office, they're just compressing their week. That looks different than a person that's working away from the office remotely. So there's some additional conditions and terms there's an agreement attached to the web form that we highly encourage supervisors to talk through with their employees, even prior to approving it, to make sure that they're all on the same page and all expectations are clear. So for example, with that work agreement, it talks about the duration, the pay and attendance. It talks about attendance, talks about leave. It talks about UK equipment that they're supposed to be using, any liability, reimbursement. It talks about workers' comp a little bit. It talks about the work assignment. It talks about the employee evaluation, how you're going to be evaluated as you work remotely, any records you're required to keep. It talks about remote work not being a substitute for care, whether it be child care or elder care. It talks about performance locations, and it also talks about curtailment of the agreement. So for example, if the supervisor decided they wanted to end the agreement, if it was in a trial period of 90 days and they could just wait the 90 days, but let's just say this person, they are setting up an agreement for the next fiscal year, for example. If something was not going right with the agreement, or the employee may themselves say, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to come back to the office, they can give a notice that they no longer want to work remotely and just come back to the office. Or the supervisor can say, for said reasons, I don't want to continue this option, and I'm going to give you like a month's notice or a 2-week notice, depending on if you're exempt or non-exempt. So that's something to think about. It can be ended if need be. So pay and benefits tips. Again, I mentioned highly recommend if you're thinking about reducing your hours and you're curious about what that's going to mean for your paycheck, for example, for your earnings, for your deductions that you may have for different things, health, life, what have you. Call the benefits office and tell them what you're trying to do, and they'll be able to tell you, okay, here's what your check is going to be if you do this. And so that's just something for you to know. They also can make arrangements for you to make up your premiums. So if you were to be out for an extended time and you didn't have, you needed to pay the premiums yourself, like for the unpaid week, or you took 2 weeks, for example, they could make arrangements with you. And then there's other things to think about with benefits, but definitely give them a call. One other thing to keep in mind with the pay piece is if you are requesting an unpaid week, you don't want to do that around a holiday. If you do, just note that you will not be paid for that holiday like everyone else. So for example, if you were to pick the week around Memorial Day, you don't want to pick that week around Memorial Day because you won't get paid for Memorial Day. Because you have to be working the day before and after a holiday to get paid for the holiday. Business officer tips. So you may be thinking again, when does my business officer need to be involved? If you're just simply talking about something that won't impact pay or pay rate or schedule, anything like that, then your business officer may not necessarily need to be involved. But if you're talking about something that's going to impact the pay of that person, their benefits or anything like that, then the business officer does need to be involved. Also keeping in mind, I mentioned earlier that the pay rate, the pay scale, you need to be thinking about that piece, but also holiday accruals and different things load at different times of the year differently. So talking to the business officer can help you not end up in a situation where you're having to backtrack and make changes to someone's pay. All right, some tips for working from home. There's a lot of things to think about here, but here's some basic tips. First of all, if possible, have a dedicated workspace and stay organized. Staying organized can help you a lot. Stick to a routine. So that may mean getting up, getting dressed, eating breakfast, having coffee, what have you, getting and going ahead and getting started. Taking breaks, that could be part of a routine. Integrate your family rhythms into your rhythm. That's super important. If you have others that are going to be in and out or are going to be around, sometimes they may think you're not working or they may not realize that you need to focus at this point. So if you can somehow figure out a way to adjust your schedule and their schedule and kind of get that work together, that can be great. Don't expect to do it all. Sometimes when you're working remotely, you feel like, oh, I'm not in the office and the phone's not ringing and people aren't popping in and I can get so much more done. You may be able to, but keep in mind you're still human and you still are going to get some interruptions, and it's just a different workspace. And so you're going to get some things done, but don't expect to be super person just because you're working remotely. Establish expectations with your manager and supervisor. That's just talking about what you will be working on that week, what they can expect from you. If you need to adjust that, let them know as soon as possible. Don't wait until the project is due and then say, I wasn't able to do it. You know, just talk about what the challenges may be as you go along, and then you can make some evaluations and adjustments. Celebrate accomplishments. When you complete something, yay, that's exciting. And then working from home, you know, sometimes people do that on a one-off kind of thing. They just do it every so often when they are working on a particular project that they're trying to get done. And sometimes that's reason for celebrating. Again, continue to evaluate and adjust and monitor to see how things are going for you. There's some things that you do in the office that you may not be able to do. It may not work as smoothly at home. So just kind of be mindful how things are working and what resources you need. How that may be different at home versus in the office. And then even what support you may need, it may be different. So do something for yourself every day. That is just kind of goes without saying, but you know, think about it. And then stay healthy, take breaks, be a role model. You could potentially be a role model for others in the office. Like, here's what I do to make this work, and kind of share your stories. So that ends this presentation, giving an overview of flex work options at the University of Kentucky. And then here is some information about the team that works in the Office of Work Life. As always, we are here to support you as you are managing your work and your life responsibilities. If you need assistance with any of these flex work options or any of the other services that we provide, we encourage you to give us a call or email us, and we'll be happy to assist you.